In this video I'm going to describe the assembly of the glue jig system. The purpose of the glue jig system is to glue up these laminate strips to make laminate boards, such as this large laminate board for making some difficult projects, or even these thinner board for making stuff like knife handles or other projects. The system works by getting these thin laminate strips, coating them with glue, placing them between these two angle irons, and then clamping with clamps as the glue dries. As a result, you get nice, straight, parallel sides on all your laminate strips. In my first prototypes, I just used 2 angle irons, and then I used some clamps to clamp them together. But I found out what was happening as I was clamping together. I was either getting this or this. The sides weren't staying perfectly parallel, and as a result, my boards didn't have parallel sides on them. So to overcome this, I made this jig with these L brackets or angle irons, right on these T-channel rails. This front bracket is actually mounted to the rails, actually mounted right into the T-slots with some bolts. And then this front angle iron rides on these thin pieces that ride in the channels on the rail. And as a result, when I put my boards in here and then clamp them, I can tighten these screws up, and these keep these sides perfectly parallel. I don't get this action at all. So my boards come out nice and straight with parallel sides on all the sides. So it's just a better way to glue up your laminate strips. I'm making this video for 2 purposes. First of all, to show how the system is assembled, but also in case you want to make your own system using similar materials, or maybe you want to make a smaller glue-up jig, or maybe even a larger glue-up jig, or maybe something taller for gluing up taller boards. You can get parts to make this. A lot of the parts are available from MasterCard. Channel, if you want it, is available from Accu-Slice, or you can use other channels such as this other commercial T-slot channel. I actually prefer the wider channels over the smaller channel. It gives you more surface area and you get better surface for gluing up your boards. Okay, I'm ready to start the assembly of the glue jig system. I'm starting out with a piece of MDF. This MDF is 12 inches wide by 36 inches long. And I have raised off the table a couple 2x4s, so as I drill through it I don't drill into the table. Now, I'm using a series of jigs that I custom made to assemble these glue jig systems. It's very important when you're gluing these, or when you're attaching these rails to the board, that they be perfectly parallel. You can't have any of this tapering, or they have to be perfectly parallel. If they are not, then the system's not going to slide properly through the channels when you assemble it. So I have my piece of MDF, and this is perfectly straight. The sides are perfectly parallel, and it's designed for attaching the 2 outer rails. So I put my 2 rails on here, and I try and get them centered. I want around 2 inches on each side of the jig. I'm going to move over a hair. And we're right on there. And then I get this front edge of this jig perfectly parallel to my baseboard, and then put a couple of spring clamps to hold it in place during the drilling operation. Then I'm ready to drill the holes for my first channel. These channels have 2 1/4-inch diameter holes, and they're designed that these carriage bolts will slide through it and I can clamp them in position. So I take that and I usually clamp it in place using a couple spring clamps so it doesn't move during the drilling operation. And I usually just make sure it's tight against that jig. And I drill 2 1/4-inch diameter holes. And then I'll be putting 2 these are 1.25 inch carriage bolts, 1/4-inch diameter, 20 threads per inch. So I just take that bottom spring clamp off because it's in the way when I put it. And then I'll put these 2 carriage bolts through there. I usually tap them in just to set this hex or this square part of the carriage bolt into the MDF. The purpose of that just so it doesn't twist as you. And again, just make sure that's tight against this jig. And then a couple of hex head nuts to clamp it in position. My regular socket set won't fit between these 2 rails, so this smaller jig, which I put a set of vice grips on it just so I can give me a better torque on it as I'm tightening it. I can release that clamp, and I'm ready to glue the opposite, or ready to attach the opposite side. And again, same thing, spring clamps, just to hold it in place during the gluing operation. And that board's nice and tight still going in. Then I have another jig, a little bit smaller jig, which I use to attach the additional rails. I don't need to clamp that in position, I just use it as a spacer. Clamp the rail in place, make sure it's tight, snug. And this, again, has parallel sides. The whole purpose is to keep these 2 rails perfectly parallel to one another. Again, the purpose of this spacer with parallel sides of a set dimension is to keep these channels perfectly aligned, so when I put my angle iron on here, the pre-drilled holes align perfectly with the slots in the channel. And I just go down the line and add the additional 2 channels. Now the purpose of the multiple channels, I like to use 5 of these channels, and I do like these wider channels rather than this, T-slot channel, just because it has more surface area. And when I'm gluing up my piece of the wood, I have more surface area, especially if I want to glue maybe a 12-inch long board. I can space it against 2 of these rails. Sometimes I go against 3 rails. When I'm doing long strips, I'll go across all 5 rails. It just gives me more surface area to make sure everything stays perfectly straight and aligned. Okay, now I'm ready to put my angle irons on. has some, these are 5/8 inch, along 1/4 inch, 20 thread per inch hex head bolts. Slide in the channels on these rails. And I do put these in all 5 of the rails. And then I insert it in the holes in the angle iron. And if everything is perfectly aligned and straight, they should line up, which they do very perfectly. The washers in here. And then the remaining rails attached to these sliding, these are brass pieces that slide in the channels on these rails. And I only like to use 2 of these. In my initial prototype I used 3. And the more of these you put in there, the more trouble you have with binding as you're trying to move it. So I find that 2 is all you need. The whole purpose of this is just to prevent this rail from, angling up as you clamp. So 2 is all you need to hold it in place. So I put 2 of those in place. Then I use these thumb screws. These again 1/4 20 thread per inch thumb screws with pretty large heads, so it's easy to grip. Attach those to the nuts, and then you slide this. And again, the purpose of this is to get your laminate strips, attach glue them up, put a cradle of wax paper here to keep glue off your jig. And then you can clamp it, put some clamps on here, either C-clamps or parallel clamps or bar clamps, and then kind of tighten these up a little bit. Again, the whole purpose is to keep this front rail from rocking. And then as you clamp it and glue it, it should glue it quite nicely for you. As far as maintenance of the systems, a couple things. Number 1, make sure you keep glue off the system. Always put a cradle of wax paper in here, so as I'm putting my strips in there, they go inside the wax paper and it keeps glue off my system. If you do get glue squeezing out, try and wipe it up as fast as you can. You may at times want to clean these channels where these brass pieces slide in and out. And either some sandpaper or file, just cleaning up the edges or the bottom of these channels just to clean it up. But that is now all set, ready to ship. I have a number of videos on projects I've made, gluing up these laminate strips to make these laminate boards. This system is used a lot for making a lot of my Dizzy Bolt projects. So a description of using the system is in a number of those videos. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or concerns, please give us a call or drop us an email. We'd be glad to talk to you. Also, if you go to our website, to the Glue Jig page, we have the other videos listed describing the system and its application for making projects such as Dizzy Bolt projects and some of the knife handles we made. And again, thank you for watching this video.